The actors on stage were ready. Hokage advisor Mitokado Homura spoke first. "This is Prince Shinji, the future daimyo of our land of fire." The assembled Jonin were sizing up this child, who was only in his teens. Although he wore a luxurious ceremonial robe, his forced expression made him seem all too transparent. Prince Shinji, along with the esteemed ministers, has graced Konoha with his presence at a time when we are selecting our next Hokage. We hope you can offer us some counsel. The Jonin who had been summoned finally realized what was happening. With the entire decision-making elite of the village present, and representatives from the daimyo's office as well, the decision of who would be Hokage was to be made today. Everyone immediately perked up and became serious. Gen Shinji, the crown prince of the land of fire, fixed his gaze on Hinata Shin. He looked at this youth who was even younger than himself. This time, he didn't glance back at the ministers behind him. After a moment of hesitation, he directly asked, "You are Hinata Shin?" Shin replied with utter calmness. This lack of etiquette did not anger Gen Shinji. Instead, he continued to ask, "If you become Hokage, how do you plan to deal with Sunagakure?" Everyone's attention was focused on the conversation between the two. "Me, become Hokage," Shin countered. "Who said I was going to be Hokage?" Gen Shinji was somewhat bewildered, and everyone else present was also stunned. The young crown prince then turned his gaze back to the ministers behind him, seeing that they too were all surprised. He couldn't help but ask, "You don't want to be Hokage?" Many in the room had hoped for Hinata Shin to take this position, yet they heard Shin say, "When did I ever say I wanted to be Hokage?" A murmur of whispers filled the room. Tsunade, on one side, frowned, staring at Shin's back, muttering, "What is this guy up to?" On the other side, Shikaku had the same thought. He didn't believe Hinata Shin lacked ambition for power. Not wanting to be Hokage could only mean one thing. He desired a higher position, more influence. Gen Shinji felt his breathing quicken. He clenched his fists, and after a long pause, he said, "You will be like in the future, right? You want to be an emperor, to sit in a position higher than the daimyo, to depose me." He directly brought up things that shouldn't have been said. This young crown prince likely didn't understand what it meant to speak words that strike at the heart. What he was asking at this moment was precisely what was on his mind. The ministers behind him couldn't stop him in time. A minister leaned in and whispered in his ear, "Your Highness, saying these things is inappropriate." Gen Shinji could no longer care about that. He suddenly stood up, his voice urgent, "Can you help me get revenge?" "Sunagakure," Shin calmly asked back. The next moment, everyone in the room heard words that shocked them all. "If you can help me get revenge, I can let you be the daimyo." The entire assembly of Jonin erupted in an uproar. Mitokado Homura was stunned for a moment, then quickly said, "Prince Shinji, such jokes cannot be made lightly." However, as soon as he finished speaking, he noticed that the ministers behind the young crown prince were all silent. Instead, their eyes were fixed on Shin, as if waiting for his response. A thought flashed through Mitokado Homura's mind. Has this crown prince gone mad? Has this world gone mad? Shikaku, who also felt disbelief, couldn't understand why the crown prince of a nation would be willing to hand over his entire country. His gaze lingered on Gen Shinji for a long time, then shifted to the ministers behind him. Was it these people playing tricks, coercing and deceiving the young crown prince? He had initially guessed that these ministers, in order to curry favor with Hinata Shin, would support him as the fourth Hokage. But he never imagined that these people would actually intend to give this country to him. What was supposed to be a meeting to select the fourth Hokage had now completely changed its subject. "I have no intention of being the daimyo," Shin replied under everyone's gaze. "However, I happen to have a gift for you." Before everyone could ponder why he refused, they saw a member of the Hyuga clan slowly approach, holding a wooden box. Shikaku thought to himself that agreeing to help Gen Shinji get revenge would mean declaring war on Sunagakure. Defending against an external enemy was entirely different from invasion. The Land of Wind had a harsh climate, and given Konoha's current situation, even with Hinata Shin's exceptional intelligence, he absolutely wouldn't be able to achieve it. It was because he knew he couldn't achieve it that he refused, wasn't it? Upon opening the wooden box, Gen Shinji let out a startled scream. Someone craned their neck to look, and discovered that it contained a severed head. It's the head of the Fourth Kazekage Rosa, Shin said calmly. He instigated the puppeteer to kill our daimyo, so he deserves to die. What? The people inside suddenly stirred, pushing forward to get a clear look at the head. Mitokado Homura, being very close, could see clearly. He stammered, "It really is, the Kazekage's head. How did Hinata Shin do it? Even if he could dominate the ninja world in the future, he should only be a chunin at this point. Is it really the Kazekage? Lord Shin killed the Kazekage? How is this possible?" Nara Suzaku was inwardly horrified. If Hinata Shin already possessed such extraordinary strength, what chance did they have of winning? Minato Namikaze, standing beside him, watched it all silently, his heart remarkably calm. Ignoring the surrounding clamor, Shinji stared blankly at the head in the box, suddenly bursting into tears. He looked at Hinata Shin. "They all say you are the fated one in the prophecy, the future emperor. I can give up being daimyo, and entrust this country to you. It is the will of heaven and the desire of the people." Shikaku could no longer hold back. He quietly retreated a few steps, moving to Yamanaka-yu's side. "If we don't act now, it will truly be too late." Yamanaka-yu glanced at him calmly, then whispered to a clansman beside him, "Proceed." Shikaku finally breathed a sigh of relief. But at this moment, a minister behind Shinji suddenly stepped forward and shouted, "Lord Shin, you are the savior of this world, the chosen one, and you should accept this country. Under your rule, the land of fire will surely prosper. Lord Shin, please become the emperor of the land of fire, and the emperor of the entire world in the future. Lord Shin, the land of fire needs you." For a moment, the ministers all knelt down. The ninjas in the room were completely stunned. Weren't they supposed to be recommending a Hokage? Nara Shikaku's expression grew even more grim. If Hinata Shin were to become the emperor of the land of fire, there would be no chance at all. At this moment, a voice rang out from among the ninjas, "Lord Shin, you should be the emperor of the land of fire. The land of fire needs your leadership. Konoha also needs your leadership." Everyone looked in the direction of the voice again, their expressions immediately becoming very interesting, especially the clan ninjas. Nara Shikaku's eyes widened in shock and anger. "Suzaku, what are you saying?" The person speaking was none other than his own clansman, Nara Suzaku. Even if there were people in Konoha who leaned towards Hinata Shin, they wouldn't dare to casually get involved in such a major national affair. Shikaku never expected his own clansman to say such a thing. Nara Suzaku suddenly became the focus of everyone's attention. He stepped forward a few paces, reaching the front of the crowd. "I happen to have something to expose," he said expressionlessly. Nara Shikaku colluded with Mitokado Homura and Koharu, intending to use the Yamanaka clan's mind transfer jutsu to control Prince Shinji and the ministers, thereby allowing Minato Namikaze to become the Fourth Hokage. "Please vote." Tip, "Thank you." The entire conference room fell into a terrifying silence. Nara Suzaku's words had undoubtedly thrown a bomb into everyone's hearts. The contention for the Fourth Hokage had previously been a brewing undercurrent, imperceptible to outsiders, but now all the unsavory details were laid bare. Everyone was shocked that those they had always respected would resort to such despicable means. Shikaku Nara's eyes widened, staring intently at his clansman. He realized something else and immediately turned to Yamanaka-yu, meeting a pair of indifferent eyes. In an instant, the world seemed to spin, and he staggered backward. "Nara Suzaku, what nonsense are you spouting?" Koharu was the one who shouted, caught off guard by his sudden defection. "Arrest him! Arrest him!" Her voice rose several octaves as she demanded the Anbu to come in and apprehend him. However, the moment the Anbu, Shin, appeared, they all froze. Koharu snapped, "What are you waiting for?" One of the Anbu, however, spoke up, "Why not let him finish speaking?" Koharu was stunned, looking at the Anbu who belonged to her with disbelief. What did you say?" The Anbu continued, "All Jonin are present today. Is there anything that cannot be clarified? If Lord Koharu has a clear conscience, you can naturally prove your innocence." Koharu quickly calmed down. She glanced at Mikado Homura beside her and saw that he also had a grim expression. As for the Crown Prince and the ministers, these old foxes who had navigated the political arena naturally saw the underlying currents. One by one, they wisely chose to remain silent, waiting for Hinata Shin to speak. Nara Suzaku, do you know what you are saying? Someone questioned him. It was Tsunade, who had been standing by the side. She was suppressing her anger, though she didn't know why she was angry. Nara Suzaku's expression was calm, and he spoke unhurriedly. Shikaku Nara, Mikado Homura, and Utatane Koharu conspired to seize the position of Hokage. However, Yamanaka Yu of the Yamanaka clan refused to be complicit with them, thus rejecting their proposal. The conference room was silent. From the nomination of the Hokage candidate, to the Crown Prince ceding the position of Daimyo, to the ministers wanting to support Hinata Shin as emperor. One event after another was continuously breaking through their psychological limits. Some intelligent individuals saw this as a power struggle, a political purge, but the dark methods exposed within it still exceeded their expectations. What was the duty of a ninja? Had those in high positions forgotten? They had all become playthings of power. Lord Tsunade, you don't need to question me. Why not ask them if what I'm saying is true? Nara Suzaku continued. Shikaku Nara's face was stern, his eyes filled with endless malice. Just as he was about to say something, he was interrupted by Nara Suzaku again. During the time of crisis for the Land of Fire, it was Lord Shin who stepped forward to save this country, defeating Sunagakure, Cloud Village, and Iwagakure. Suzaku then turned his gaze to Mikado Homura and Utatane Koharu. You two advisors know this very well, but you fear that your power will be threatened after Lord Shin ascends to the throne, which is why you wanted to support Minato Namikaze as Hokage, is that right? Silence, Shikaku Nara roared. Minato is qualified to be Hokage. The third Hokage had always trained him as his successor. With Minato as the fourth Hokage, his achievements and merits will be no less than anyone else's, Nara Suzaku sneered. Is that so? Then why did Minato Namikaze have to beg Lord Shin to come forward and save Konoha? You! Shikaku Nara seemed to have reached the peak of his anger. He was about to argue further but was interrupted by another voice. Enough. There's no need to say more. Shikaku was stunned and looked at Mikado Homura. The outwardly refined and steady old man sighed. I didn't expect things to be exposed. Utatane Koharu turned her head away, remaining silent. The conference room erupted in an uproar. Shikaku Nara felt his heart and lungs were about to suffocate. With things having reached this point, he was even prepared for a desperate struggle. Looking at these two old fellows, he was instantly alerted. Nara Suzaku's words seemed to be hinting that he also knew the truth behind Sunagakure's retreat and was using it as leverage. The strategy to assassinate the daimyo of the Land of Fire was orchestrated by the third Hokage. Once this was exposed, Shikaku was lost in thought for a moment. He looked up at everyone, seeing pairs of disbelieving and furious eyes. He turned his head to look at Hinata Shin again, seeing that the other party's expression was calm from beginning to end, as if everything that had just happened was not worth his attention at all. Was all of this within his calculations, from when he was imprisoned, starting with the death of Inoichi, step by step to this point? Did I, by any chance, lose completely? Shikaku felt a wave of confusion, and the surrounding noise seemed to turn into white noise. He could even hear his own breathing and heartbeat, thumping deafeningly. Minato, were you aware of these matters? Tsunade suddenly questioned Minato. In what Nara Suzaku had said earlier, he only mentioned that Shikaku and the two advisors would support him to ascend, but did not mention whether he was involved. Minato, who had also been silent the entire time, became the focus of everyone's attention. The gazes of the people in Minato's village, all of them were companions he was familiar with, and many of them were willing to follow him. Minato's throat suddenly felt choked. This kind of question seemed to have been asked to himself by someone in the future. When the village faced a crisis in the future, he had acted against the village's interests according to Shikaku's plan. Later, when the matter was exposed, the first Hokage had questioned him. Were you aware? Minato suddenly felt immense pain. What decision had he made after first learning of those futures? Why did it still come to this point? The future, starting from the death of the third Hokage, he had lost his composure, to the point where he was following Shikaku's plan for everything that followed. His ideal Konoha was a place where comrades loved and helped each other, a place where everyone's bonds were connected. But wasn't everything he was doing now also destroying the village of his dreams? It would be fine once I became Hokage, I could govern Konoha according to my own ideas. At this moment, Minato suddenly realized that the position of Hokage had become his obsession, leading him step by step into the abyss. He told himself not to put the cart before the horse, but wasn't he the one who was putting the cart before the horse now? Minato was unaware of all of this, Shikaku said at this moment, his voice a little hoarse and no longer aggressive. Minato gritted his teeth and glanced at Kushina in the crowd. She was looking at him with a worried expression and shaking her head silently, as if signaling him to deny everything. Deny everything to protect himself, and just as Minato remained silent, a voice spoke before him. I believe Lord Minato was unaware. Minato immediately turned his head to look and froze on the spot. Shin said calmly, this is all a conspiracy by the three of them, wanting to coerce Lord Minato to join them. But how could Lord Minato associate with them? The three of them should also know this, so they wouldn't let Lord Minato know these things. Many people were surprised. This was clearly the best opportunity to eliminate their enemies. Shin's words did indeed gain the approval of many. They were Minato's followers, and Minato had always had a noble and righteous image. The ones who found it hardest to accept that Minato would do such a thing were them. Minato looked at the young man, seeing that he was also looking at him. Was he repaying a final debt of gratitude? However, how should the three of them be dealt with? Hinata Shin spoke again, pointing at Nara Suzaku, Mitokado Homura, and Utatane Koharu. Nara Suzaku smiled bitterly, while the two Hokage advisors closed their eyes and remained silent. Naturally, it's up to you to decide, someone immediately responded. The speaker was the head of the Aburame clan, Aburame Shibi. Shin's expression was calm. I am not the Hokage, so this matter should naturally be decided by everyone's discussion. Lord Shin, Konoha should naturally be led by you. That's right, Lord Shin, many people responded, and these clan ninjas seemed to have finally seen the situation clearly at this moment. Those ministers all fell to their knees with a thud. Lord Shin, please do not refuse any longer. For the land of fire, and for the entire world, please ascend to the throne of Emperor. Lord Shin, seeing this, everyone in the entire conference room also knelt on one knee. Some hesitated, such as Shinji. A minister beside him tugged at his trouser leg, and he also knelt on both knees, prostrating himself on the ground. Some people were still standing. One minister pointed at them and angrily rebuked, Lord Shin is blessed by destiny and is destined to rule the world. Do you dare to disobey the divine oracle? Minato, who was frozen there, glanced at the people still standing, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Kushina. Even Fugaku Ucha knelt on one knee with great obedience. Beside him, Shikaku nodded at him silently. An indescribable emotion gathered in Minato's heart. He was unsure whether to cry or laugh, to be angry or feel fortunate. His body remained stiff for a long while before he slowly bent his legs. With Nara Suzaku's identification and Mitokado Homura's acknowledgement, Shikaku and Minato found themselves without any allies, completely losing the will to resist further. It was then that Shikaku urged Minato to yield, at least to preserve himself. What Hinata Shin had said earlier suggested he wouldn't be relentlessly pursued, which was now his only hope. As for the two Hokage advisors, they had already understood the defeat was inevitable when Nara Suzaku appeared. Their last remaining objective was to safeguard the secret of Sunagakure's retreat. As Minato bowed his head, Kushina immediately knelt on one knee like the others. Jiraiya, seeing this, also chose to comply. This young man was about to control Konoha and the Land of Fire, he couldn't possibly oppose his own village. Among those present, besides Shin and the three sinners, only Tsunade remained standing tall. Shin ignored her and began to pronounce the fate of the three. Mitokado Homura, Utatane Koharu, as Hokage advisors, you have acted foolishly and incompetently. However, considering you have dedicated most of your lives to the village, I shall permit you to live out your remaining years in peace." Mitokado Homura and Utatane Koharu heard this with calm expressions, as if they had anticipated it. Permitted to live out their years in peace meant they would continue to exist, but they would have no further involvement in any of Konoha's affairs. After today, the entire Konoha would undergo a complete reshuffle, and perhaps even the entire Land of Fire. As for Nara Suzaku, Shin paused when he mentioned his name, causing Minato to tense up, watching him intently. Shikaku showed no fear, merely observing with a cold smile. Attempting to overthrow Konoha, and furthermore, inciting and instigating others. Such a person, consumed by ambition and blinded by greed, is of no use alive. Execute him immediately. As soon as Shin finished speaking, a voice immediately retorted. Wait. Minato stood up, his expression filled with anxiety and outrage. Shikaku has also contributed greatly to the village, helping us achieve many victories during the war. How can you do this? However, Shin surprisingly nodded with ease. You have a point. I should consider more opinions. This sudden shift in attitude caught Minato off guard. Just as Minato thought he might be able to save Shikaku, another voice suddenly spoke. Nara Suzaku has caused chaos in Konoha. How can such a grave crime be lightly forgiven? Executing him is already a great leniency. Minato looked towards the voice, his pupils widening slightly. It was Fugaku Ucha who had spoken. He was now speaking with righteous indignation, uttering seemingly plausible words. If Shin were to let Nara Suzaku's scheme succeed, wouldn't Konoha be ruined in his hands? Shin nodded gently, calmly stating, that also has merit. Minato suddenly became alert, realizing something. Then, several more voices chimed in one after another. Nara Suzaku must be executed. He is a sinner of Konoha. Lord Shin need not be too merciful to him. Minato looked at them one by one. Among them were members of the Aburame, Inuzuka, and even the Sarutobi clan. These were people he had personally met and tried to win over in the past 2 days. He had originally believed they would be the ones supporting him to become the Fourth Hokage at this Jonin meeting. When he had met them, they had been enthusiastic and courteous. Now, they were so eager to attach themselves to a new master, rushing to distance themselves from him. Minato finally understood what it meant to be kicked when you're down. Whose advice should I heed? Shin said calmly again. His gaze was fixed on Minato, as if waiting for his answer. Minato remained silent for a long while, then suddenly looked at Shikaku. He saw that Shikaku seemed numb, his expression blank, completely indifferent to everything that was happening. Minato, Fugaku shouted sternly, stop pleading for this sinner. Wake up, Minato, you've been misled by him, Aburame Shibi also said. Lord Shin is already showing mercy. The crowd then turned to persuade Minato, having discerned Hinata Shin's intentions and now seizing the moment to declare their allegiance and loyalty. Minato was left bewildered and helpless by the scene before him, his fingers trembling unconsciously. He had been misled. He had been misled. Minato, a gentle voice sounded by his ear. Kushina leaned closer, gently taking his hand. Minato, she called out again, her grip tightening. Everyone was trying to persuade him, to guide him back from his misguided path. Minato chuckled silently, his smile vanishing as quickly as it appeared. He looked up at Shin, then finally closed his eyes, saying no more. Seeing this, Shin gave the order, take them away. He had no Anbu at his disposal, but immediately a Jonin volunteered, apprehending Nara Suzaku and escorting him and the 2 Hokage advisors out of the room. Lord Shin is wise. The ministers immediately began to flatter him again. On the other side, Tsunade watched this farce with a cold expression the entire time. As the dust settled, she suddenly turned and walked towards the door. Jiraiya quickly followed suit. Shin paid them no mind. At this moment, a minister gently nudged Gen Shinji. Gen Shinji knelt and stepped forward, removing his ceremonial hat and bowing before Shin. Lord Shin, I am incapable of governing this nation. I implore you to rule the Land of Fire with benevolence. Another minister cried out. Please, Lord Shin, rule the Land of Fire. Just as in the Oracle, Konoha can be expanded into a new royal city. The members of the Hyuga clan, who had been standing behind Shin, now showed traces of excitement on their faces. They had long awaited this moment, for Lord Shin to lead them to rule the world. Shin swept his gaze over the kneeling figures, his eyes finally resting on Gen Shinji, who was kneeling before him. Gen Shinji seemed to sense something and slowly lifted his head a little, seeing a hand extended towards him. The young heir's heart trembled. From childhood, he had held a revered status, told by countless people that he was the future master of this nation. The books he read taught him to be a wise ruler, yet he saw his father's mediocre demeanor, sitting on the throne with a clear conscience despite achieving nothing, and still telling him that they were born to rule all people. But after those future memories appeared, he believed he absolutely could not allow the Land of Fire to become what it was in the future. The only thing he could do was entrust this nation to someone truly capable. To give this person the nation and its people, so that this person could bring peace and prosperity. Gen Shinji pressed his head tightly to the floor, his eyes closed, and spoke with a trembling voice, "I obey the will of heaven and welcome the sovereign. From this day forward, I shall not deviate from your decrees, nor waver in my sincere heart, nor betray my loyalty." After a brief silence, he heard the voice before him. "I forgive." The crowd knelt and shouted in unison, "Long live the sovereign." Don't worry about future plot points, there is a complete outline, and there are still many slice-of-life scenes. This is just my personal writing style, the early plot is a bit rushed. When Jin returned to the Hyuga clan grounds, he saw all the Hyuga clan members kneeling in the courtyard to welcome his arrival. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. Long live the Emperor." Jin walked step by step through the courtyard, and only then did everyone slowly rise. Iono Hyuga followed closely behind, and they entered the room together. Only the sound of footsteps remained in the quiet residence. As soon as he sat down, someone immediately came to report that someone wished to see him, and there was more than one person. Jin directly told the messenger to go out and spread the word that he would not see anyone else today and that those people should go back on their own. There were still many things to do. Although he was about to ascend the throne as emperor, just like in the future, his situation was completely different from the future. In the future, he had completely swept the world when he became emperor, and his strength could be considered the strongest in the current era. But now, he still only had the strength of a Chunin, and the power he held was not very strong. In addition, those who supported him now were all actively flattering him, and there would inevitably be many who would outwardly obey but inwardly defy him later. It would still be quite difficult to truly rule this country. There was also something that had always bothered him, the memories of himself in the minds of the people in this world, and why they appeared. It couldn't be that they appeared out of thin air as he transmigrated. As Jin pondered, Iono Hyuga came behind him and gently massaged his head. Not long after, someone else came to announce. This time, Jin did not refuse and instead let the person come in. "Hisashi greets Your Majesty." The young man knelt on the ground and performed a grand salute, his expression respectful. "Hisashi, you've worked hard," Jin said slowly. "For Your Majesty, this is all I should do," Hinata Hisashi replied, his head lowered, not looking at Jin at all. Iono, standing behind Jin, was now looking at him. She and her sister had grown up together with the Hisashi brothers. Although their engagement had been decided early on, Hisashi did not seem to have truly regarded Irie as his fiancée. Instead, he seemed to prefer being close to her. However, from now on, their destinies would be completely different. Hinata Iono felt no sadness. The young man beside her was the person she would follow her entire life. She would only feel fortunate for the choice she had made. Jin told Hisashi to go back and rest. He had just come out of prison, and his physical condition was not very good. After Hisashi left, Iono quietly asked, "Your Majesty, have you set the date for the enthronement?" "Soon," Jin replied, closing his eyes. "Then Konoha will still become the new royal city, right?" Iono pursed her lips, and the next sentence stopped on her lips. "Do you want to be the empress?" Jin suddenly asked. Iono felt a tremor in her heart. She suppressed it, trying her best to calm herself, and whispered, "Your Majesty hasn't met Irie yet. In the future, her sister would be the only empress." "What, are you willing to give it to her?" Iono was silent for a moment, then replied softly, "Naturally, whoever your majesty likes will be the one. Irie is my own sister, I won't fight with her." Jin had no further words, closing his eyes as if he had fallen asleep. Seeing this, Ayono gently moved him into her arms. Evening. Jin sat with Takao Hyuga. The Tenseigan is an ultimate jutsu awakened by combining the pure Byakugan with Homura's chakra. Only those of us with Homura's bloodline can wield it. Takao Hyuga explained some information about the Tenseigan to Jin. It is an ominous eye of world destruction. Even among our Otsutsuki clan, very few people possess it. Jin pondered, the Hyuga clan has so many members, and there are quite a few Byakugan in stock. Awakening the Tenseigan should not be a difficult task. Takao Hyuga hesitated. Seeing this, Jin asked, "What is it?" Takao Hyuga pondered for a moment and said, "Lord Shin wants the Tenseigan, is that right?" Jin also thought for a moment and asked, "What is the price?" His future self had also developed Tenseigan weapons and awakened the Tenseigan, but he didn't know what method he had used. He had no memories of the future, and there were no specific details in others' memories regarding this matter. The Hyuga clan indeed possesses sufficiently pure Byakugan, and this subordinate also carries the chakra of ancestor Homura. "You will die, right?" Jin saw through something and asked directly. Hyuga Takao nodded silently, then added, "This subordinate came to atone for sins, willing to die for Lord Shin." Jin frowned, "Don't say foolish things." How did his future self obtain the Tenseigan? Jin couldn't help but sigh. In the future, he and Orochimaru developed new biotechnology by analyzing captured white Zetsu. However, there was no sign of white Zetsu yet. Earlier in the Mist Village, he confirmed that Ucha Madara was not dead. He wondered what schemes he was plotting in the shadows. If Lord Shin wishes to rapidly increase his strength, why not consider the tailed beasts? Hyuga Takao said again at this moment. Tailed beasts, 9 tails? Jin pondered. The 9 tails chakra is extremely vast. Currently, we also have the 4 tails and 5 tails. As long as we can completely control the chakra of these tailed beasts, it will be enough to roam the ninja world. I will consider it. Night fell. Having swept away many threats within Konoha, Jin thought he could sleep soundly, but unexpectedly, he had a rare dream. He saw an old man, dressed in white robes, with 2 horns on his forehead, purple Rinnegan eyes, and a third eye on his brow. Jin knew who he was, but the other party's words made him break out in a cold sweat. Meddling with time and disrupting order, a scourge upon this world. Jin woke up from the dream, sat up abruptly, and gasped for breath. Ayono, who was woken by him, quickly asked, "What's wrong?" A moment later, Jin calmed down, lightly touching his forehead. The room was extremely quiet, and there were only the 2 of them on the bed. "Your Highness," Ayono asked cautiously. Jin's gaze flickered, and he said, "I had a dream." "Was it a nightmare?" Ayono reached out and gently stroked his back, trying to comfort him. Jin did not respond, muttering to himself blankly, "Shouldn't I be the one to stabilize order?" Ayono then hugged him, her soft and plump body pressed against him. Jin remained silent for a while before suddenly turning and getting out of bed. "You sleep first." He grabbed his outer garment and put it on, then walked out of the room and stood in the courtyard. The moonlight was hazy, and the night breeze was cool. Jin gazed at the solitary moon in the night sky, his mind in a turmoil. Takao, a figure suddenly appeared beside him. "I want to see your hometown." Hyuga Takao was stunned and couldn't help but ask. "Now?" Jin nodded calmly. "Let's go." Someone was manipulating everything from behind. If the future that everyone knew was real, then the one meddling with time was not him. He was the one being manipulated. Jin leaped onto Hyuga Takao's shoulder and arm, and together they flew into the night sky. A sharp sting woke Minato from his dream. He sat up and looked at his palm, where something seemed to be branded, emitting wisps of white steam. A small, white, circular pattern. The voice from the dream echoed in his ear again. "My son Ashura, correct this world." Hyuga Takao flew with Jin under the night sky, passing through mountains, rivers, towns, and fields, finally landing in a secluded mountain forest. This area was extremely remote, bordering the land of fire, and rarely visited by people. The sounds of insects chirping and birds singing, along with the rustling of bushes, could be heard from time to time. Faintly, they heard the sound of a rushing waterfall. Hyuga Takao led Jin forward, arriving before the waterfall. Below it was a lake, and the waterfall seemed to conceal a cave. Jin observed carefully, while Hyuga Takao formed a hand seal. The rushing waterfall immediately parted, creating an opening like a curtain being pulled aside. There was no light source inside the cave, making it darker than outside, so dark that one couldn't see their hand in front of their face. Hyuga Takao held up a green orb of light, illuminating the path ahead. Continuing through the cave, the sound of the waterfall's rapids grew fainter behind them, while a subtle sound of flowing water emerged from ahead. After walking for a while longer, they finally glimpsed a spring, emitting a gentle, warm glow in the darkness. There seemed to be something below. Looking around, they saw rock pillars resembling stalactites above. At the top, there appeared to be a character. Jin studied it for a long time before realizing it was the character A, the A from AUN, which represented the beginning and end of the universe. Hyuga Takao immediately leaped down with Jin. Splash, light. Beneath the spring, there was still an endless, warm glow. The two continued to descend, and after a while, they discovered a magical space below. It was as if they were still inside the cave, with the original spring floating above their heads. This space was filled with many orbs of light. The two carefully navigated through this space. Not long after, another spring emitting a bright glow appeared below them. They leaped down again. Splash, continuing to descend in the water, they eventually arrived at a cave-like area, similar to before but slightly darker. The ground and walls were uneven, and countless stalactite-like spikes hung from the ceiling. Walking in such a place made one extremely cautious. As they ventured deeper, they began to see bubble-like objects, and more of them. Some were like the light orbs they had encountered before, while others seemed incomplete. Rumble. A sudden sound from ahead made Jin stop abruptly. The cave began to tremble slightly, and a colossal figure slowly emerged from the front. It was a giant crab, its shell marked with alternating yellow and red patterns, moving towards them. Jin remained still, narrowing his eyes as he stared at the behemoth that barely fit within the cave. "It's the Guardian," Hyuga Takao said at this moment. He stepped forward, and the crab showed no hostility. It looked at Hyuga Takao and lowered its head. Hyuga Takao reached out and gently stroked its shell. The giant crab obediently moved aside, clearing the path. The two passed the crab and suddenly saw light shining down from above. Looking up, they saw that this cave finally had an exit, and they could vaguely see the clear blue sky. "We've arrived," Hyuga Takao said, and with Jin, they suddenly leaped up, rushing out of the cave entrance, obscured by a tangle of stone pillars. A brand new land, sky, and sea. The horizon curved upwards, with floating islands suspended among the white clouds. Although it should have been night, a sun that was neither dazzling nor scorching hung in the sky. This was the moon. Mountains, forests, and water were all present, bordering a boundless sea. The world was bright, yet it gave off an extremely incongruous feeling. Hyuga Takao flew with Jin high in the sky. On the land, they occasionally saw abandoned towns, indicating that people had once lived here. However, the entire world was silent and dead. The Otsutsuki clan was on the verge of extinction. Gazing at everything below, Hyuga Takao's expression was extremely calm. Before long, they arrived before a cluster of palaces. Suddenly, several dark figures shot out from within and stopped before them. When Jin saw clearly, he realized they were all humanoid puppets, wearing human clothes and veils over their faces. At first glance, they looked no different from ordinary people. Then, another person emerged. This was a woman, dressed in attire with an exotic aura. Hyuga Takao stepped forward to meet her. Ujiri, the two embraced. "This is Lord Shin," Hyuga Takao introduced Jin to Ujiri. Ujiri naturally knew who Hyuga Jin was. She first glanced at her husband, then bowed to Jin. "Greetings, Lord Shin." Jin looked at her slightly bulging belly and pondered, "Are you pregnant?" Ujiri nodded gently, "Yes." The name has already been chosen, it's Toneri. In future memories, Toneri was entrusted to Jun by Hyuga Takao, who was Otsutsuki Kame, and Jun had him grow up with his own children. The three entered the main hall, where puppet dolls were seen everywhere. Unlike the puppets of the Sand Village, they could move on their own without deliberate manipulation. Hyuga Takao then led Jun into a room filled with books. The books piled here were all the crystallization of the Otsutsuki clan's civilization on the moon. However, after a brief perusal, Jun discovered that the development level of the Otsutsuki clan's ninjutsu was not as advanced as that of the ninjas on Earth. The number of recorded ninjutsu was very scarce, mostly pressure point techniques similar to those of the Hyuga clan. But thinking about it, it was normal. On the moon, it was the same clan, with no disputes for thousands of years. Without the need to use force, how could ninjutsu develop rapidly? However, there were unique aspects. The method of controlling chakra was different, allowing the strong among the Otsutsuki clan to fly. There were also secret techniques that could control and read others' thoughts, as well as the ability to absorb others' chakra. This was quite consistent with Jun's impression of the Otsutsuki clan from beyond the heavens. Due to their own power and vast chakra, their combat methods were actually extremely primitive and simple. On the contrary, the ninjas in the ninja world, due to their weak chakra, had to create countless schools and secret techniques through thousands of years of evolution to defeat their enemies. The most unique and outstanding aspects of the Otsutsuki clan on the moon, in Jun's opinion, were the puppet dolls and the Tenseigan weapons. There were 3 known Tenseigan. The first was the ultimate jutsu awakened by Otsutsuki Toneri with Hanabi's eyes in the original work. The second was a large weapon created by the branch family that destroyed the main family on the moon. The third was the golden giant Tenseigan placed in the Homura shrine, which could drive the rotation of the entire moon. The puppet dolls could be brought back to Konoha for further research, as his future self had done. The Tenseigan weapons you created in the future are different from ours, but their power is similar, Hyuga Takao said. Finally, Hyuga Takao led Jun to an island on the outskirts of the moon. Homura Shrine, it was still quiet and desolate. Thousands of years of civilization now only left a pile of cold buildings. Jun stood before a giant golden sphere of light, surrounded by many metal circular tracks. This was the Tenseigan capable of moving the moon. There is a curse on it, only Homura's descendants can approach, Hyuga Takao reminded him. Although this Tenseigan was huge, the light it emitted was not dazzling at all. Jun quietly gazed at the center of the light source. Unconsciously, he remembered that dream again. The gold and white colors in his vision became brighter and brighter. Hyuga Takao beside him suddenly widened his eyes. He had never seen the Tenseigan react like this. Jun felt himself being dragged into a strange space, with endless darkness in the distance and a graveyard nearby. The scene shifted again, and an old man in white appeared out of thin air before him, his eyes pure white, 2 horns on his forehead, and 9 black spheres floating behind him. Jun pondered for a moment. Are you Homura? Descendant of the Byakugan, the old man said slowly. Are you dead? Jun asked again. The old man nodded gently, then said, You are very different. Is that so? Jun's expression was calm. Some say I am a disruptor of order, a scourge of the ninja world. The old man heard this and said, The future is never set in stone, it all depends on your own heart. Jun couldn't help but chuckle. Do you know what I have done, or what I will do in the future? I do not sense strong malevolence from you. Jun fell silent. This old man had been dead for a long time. This was his residual chakra, and it was not on Earth, so he did not know those future memories. Homura then said, Descendant of the Byakugan, since you come from your brother's ninja world, I hope you will protect it well. Jun's eyes flickered upon hearing this, and after a moment, he gently curled his lips. I am the Emperor, of course I will protect the world that belongs to me. November, seeking votes. Shin began to meet the heads of Konoha's various clans one by one, each with their own agenda. Since the Emperor simultaneously ruled the entire country and the Land of Fire, Konoha would inevitably undergo reforms. These clan members all hoped that their kin would not be expelled from Konoha's centers of power. Administration Department, Education Department, Police Force, torture department, sealing squad, barrier team, medical department, Konoha hospital, ninja academy. Looking at Konoha's internal structure, these were all important departments controlled by various clans. For example, the entire police force was managed by the Uchiha clan, while the administration and education departments were largely staffed by the Sarutobi clan. A direct, forceful overhaul was unrealistic and would likely paralyze Konoha internally. It could only be done gradually. The first thing Shin did was to directly disband the Anbu and Root. All ninjas in the Anbu establishment, including those under Root, who nominally belonged to the Anbu, were transferred to regular units. To Shin, the Anbu was no longer necessary. The Anbu was a mixed bag, filled with the confidants of previous leaders. He would, of course, create a new department to run errands for him. Afterward, when meeting Fugaku Uchiha, he said, "I plan to establish a new department responsible for Konoha's public safety and police matters." Fugaku immediately expressed his support without a word. "The Uchiha clan is entirely at your majesty's disposal," Shin said with satisfaction. "It's best that you are willing to support this." The police force was actually a hot potato for the Uchiha. Because all its members were Uchiha clansmen, their possession of law enforcement authority had always given them a poor image among the villagers. In his future governance strategy, Shin would also disband the Uchiha police force and instead establish a fire department for the Uchiha, dedicated to doing good deeds for the villagers, thus helping to improve the Uchiha's reputation. However, there were two prerequisites for doing so. First, that Shin, as the strongest in the ninja world, would be beyond reproach. Second, that the world would be unified, and Konoha would be protected by the Tenseigan weapon, eliminating the need to worry about public safety. The new department will require the Uchiha clan's efforts, and many others from the village will also join. "We will obey your majesty's will," Fugaku said respectfully. "Furthermore, I have a request." "Speak." "My son, Itachi, greatly admires your majesty and has always wished to meet you." Shin's expression paused slightly, and he fell into thought. In the future, Fugaku Uchiha's fate could only be described as slightly better than Minato's. Because of his rebellious intentions, he was permanently exiled to the border. Afterward, Shin took his wife, Mikoto Uchiha, for himself and raised Itachi Uchiha by his side, training him into a personal guard. By the time Itachi grew up, he no longer recognized his own father. However, Fugaku's current action could be seen as an attempt to get closer to Shin, as Itachi was one of his future confidants. "Fugaku, you are wiser than others," Shin said with a light smile. "Your majesty flatters me." "Before your majesty, I am merely a firefly's light, not worth mentioning," Fugaku immediately replied, then cautiously asked, "Then, does your majesty agree?" Shin nodded gently. "You can bring him here anytime." Fugaku smiled. "Itachi will be overjoyed when he hears this." "I take my leave." After Fugaku departed, Kiyomi Hyuga brought a young child over. This was a white-haired boy wearing glasses, who looked a little timid when he saw Shin sitting there. Seeing Shin looking at him, he quickly knelt on the ground. "Greetings, Emperor." Kiyomi Hyuga said. "The director of the orphanage has also come and is waiting outside." The little boy was Kabuto Yakushi, who had recently been taken in by the Konoha orphanage. After observing Kabuto Yakushi, Shin asked curiously, "What is she here for?" "She insisted on coming herself, and in the future, she is not your majesty's." Shin glanced at him, and Kiyomi Hyuga immediately stopped speaking. In the future, the only point of criticism for him as emperor would be his indulgence in beauty. Nearly every named beauty in the original Naruto story had been involved with him. As a result, the Land of Fire ministers he met today were all hinting at wanting to offer him beautiful women. Shin was not opposed to such matters, but that was something to be done only after he was invincible in the world. Currently, he had no interest in that area. "Let her in," Shin still said, as the person was, after all, the director of the orphanage. He then asked Kabuto Yakushi, who was still kneeling, to rise. Not long after, a gentle-looking blonde woman slowly walked in from outside. She wore loose robes that concealed her figure, but one could still imagine the physique of this former elite ninja. Her etiquette was far more proper than Kabuto Yakushi's. She knelt on the ground, "Greetings, Your Majesty," whether intentionally or not. As she knelt, her loose clothing instantly tightened, highlighting the firm curves of her hips. Her waist was slender, but her thighs were full, and her hips were slightly wide, exuding a mature charm. Shin glanced at her and said, "Is there something?" Nono Yakushi remained kneeling there, maintaining her bowed posture on the ground. "Your Majesty, you wish to take Kabuto from the orphanage, is that correct? You also know the future. He is a very talented person," Nono Yakushi said. "It is Kabuto's fortune to be able to follow Your Majesty. The recent wars have brought many more children to the orphanage. I hope Your Majesty can allocate more funds." "I understand." The indifferent response caused Nono Yakushi to pause slightly. She slowly raised her gaze, only to see the Emperor's legs as he sat there. "You may leave." Yes, Nono Yakushi and Kabuto left the room together. On the way back, Kabuto noticed his Dean Mother seemed lost in thought and couldn't help but ask, "Dean Mother? Ah, what is it? What are you thinking about?" Nono Yakushi was speechless for a moment, her thoughts in a jumble. Seeing this, Kabuto comforted her, "Dean Mother, don't worry. I will definitely work hard and not disgrace you." Nono Yakushi gently ruffled his hair upon hearing this and smiled. "Of course, I believe in you." Kabuto continued, "Emperor, His Majesty, is really so young. I heard he's only 13 years old." The footsteps of the orphanage's female dean suddenly stopped. She froze in place, and in the next instant, her face flushed crimson. "That's right, he's only 13 years old. There were many boys in the orphanage who were the same age as the current emperor, and they called her Dean Mother just like Kabuto. 13 years old. What kind of nonsensical thoughts was she having? Bah. Konoha prison. The guard ninja did not stop Minato, allowing him to enter smoothly. He saw Shikaku, who was imprisoned inside. Wearing a prison uniform, he wasn't dirty or disheveled, but his expression lacked its usual vitality. Shikaku looked up upon hearing his name, and a glint appeared in his deep, quiet eyes. "Minato, you've come." A faint smile slowly reappeared on his face as he said, "Why have you come to see me? Aren't you afraid of the sadness of parting?" Minato was speechless for a moment. Shikaku leaned against the wall, showing no intention of getting up. He looked at Minato outside the iron bars and said again, "After Hinata Hisashi was imprisoned, did you come to see him in prison?" Minato shook his head silently. "It's this very cell." Minato clenched his fists, still remaining silent. Shikaku looked at his appearance and sighed, "Minato, there's no need for hatred. This is just the consequence of failure. After losing everything, I've become clear-headed. Like the Third Hokage, I've fallen into the abyss of power. Reflecting on what I did before, this outcome is what I deserve." After a period of silence, Minato asked, "Do you now think Hinata was correct?" Shikaku did not commit to an answer but instead said, "Actually, we both had another path to choose back then, but neither I nor the Third Hokage were willing to take it." He then smiled faintly at Minato. "I'm sorry, Minato. I tainted your wish, and I tainted this village. No matter what Konoha is like in others' hands, in your hands, it should at least be as beautiful as we imagined." Shikaku. "Minato, I led you down the wrong path and gave you the wrong guidance. I hope you can live a good life from now on. There are still many things in this world worth living for." Minato stood with his head bowed outside the iron bars, silent for a while. He slowly raised his head, his gaze calm. "Don't worry, Shikaku. I have received the correct guidance and found the right path. This time, I will no longer be as hesitant and uncertain as before, and I will not make mistakes again, and more, and more." Konoha has newly established a technical research department, with a young ninja named Tonakawa as its director and Sazori as its deputy director. This Tonakawa would also become the Empire's chief scientific research talent in the future, and his yet-to-be-born son, Tonakawa Katasuke, was the one responsible for developing scientific ninja tools in the original work. Jin did not bring those puppet humans down from the moon, even though he knew it would surely pique Sasori's interest. Sazori had not displayed enough loyalty to reassure Jin, but he was quite satisfied to hear that Konoha was willing to fund his research into puppets and human records. Kabuto Yakushi was sent to the ninja academy to begin his studies, and in his spare time, he served as an apprentice to Tonakawa and Sazori. The enthronement ceremony would be held in 3 days, and this news had already been proclaimed throughout the nation and would soon spread across the entire world. That legendary figure, as foretold in the oracle, had become emperor. Recently, Konoha had seen an influx of officials and wealthy merchants from various regions, all coming to offer their congratulations. These individuals were eager to catch a glimpse of the emperor's demeanor. Meanwhile, Jin was currently in seclusion, cultivating. There were many practical secret techniques among the Otsutsuki clan on the moon, and Jin's own strength also needed to advance. However, to achieve a qualitative leap in a short period, simply practicing secret techniques was far from enough. The Tenseigan weapon had also been put on the agenda. Jin had obtained the complete technology on the moon, but for it to be able to protect Konoha at all times, a continuous supply of chakra was needed. Jin speculated that he would likely possess the technology to convert natural energy into chakra in the future, which would allow the Tenseigan weapon to remain operational. But for now, he had nothing. The problem was that he lacked an environment that would allow him to develop peacefully. He couldn't even afford to lie low. He didn't know how many open attacks and hidden daggers he would have to face in the future. He needed to become stronger as soon as possible. Hyuga Takao had told him that becoming a Jinchuriki of a tailed beast was the fastest way, aside from obtaining the Tenseigan. However, Jin now had a new idea. The power of the tailed beasts also had its limits, and sealing them within one's body was a complete waste of their potential. Your Majesty, the envoy from Kirigakure has arrived, Hinata Kiyomi's voice echoed from outside the door. Jin entered the reception hall, where 2 individuals, one large and one small, were standing. The larger one was extremely burly, with orange hair reaching his waist and a fierce countenance. Mangetsu Hazuki, the wielder of the great sword Samahada, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. The other was a delicate girl with fluffy, reddish-brown curly hair, appearing to be no more than 13 or 14 years old. Greetings, Your Majesty. The moment Mangetsu Hazuki saw Jin, he immediately bowed deeply. The girl beside him looked at Jin with curiosity before also bowing. Mr. Hazuki, I have heard much of your name. Jin took his seat at the head of the table and gestured for them to sit as well. It is but a small reputation, and I am honored that it has reached Your Majesty's ears. Mangetsu Hazuki was exceedingly humble, a stark contrast to his burly and fierce appearance. How are things between you and Cloud Village? Jin inquired. After the lightning shadow retreated to the land of lightning, we also withdrew our troops. We heard that the Cloud Ninjas suffered heavy losses in the land of fire, so there should be no further conflict. Jin nodded. You have shown great kindness to Konoha. Mangetsu Hazuki immediately smiled. Your Majesty is too kind. Your Majesty has also greatly aided our Kirigakure, and we Kirigakure are willing to believe that Your Majesty will achieve great things in the future. As he spoke, he presented a booklet with both hands. This is a small token of our appreciation that we have prepared for this occasion. It is a humble offering, and we hope Your Majesty will accept it. Jin took it and glanced through it. It was all gold, silver, and wealth. Ninja villages had few rare items, so this was all they could offer. Kirigakure couldn't possibly send the 7 ninja swords. Ah, yes. Mangetsu Hazuki then gestured to the delicate girl beside him. Your Majesty, do you happen to remember her? The girl was somewhat nervous at this moment and abruptly stood up. Her name is Mai Terumi, and in the oracle, she is one of Your Majesty's personal guards. The girl hesitated for a moment, then immediately knelt down and bowed. Mai Terumi pays her respects to Your Majesty. Jin nodded gently. You may rise, Mangetsu Hazuki said. If Your Majesty does not find her wanting, you may keep her by your side. She also wishes to follow Your Majesty, which would be in accordance with the oracle. Jin looked the girl, who was the same age as him, up and down. She was beautiful, but at this moment, due to nervousness, she appeared less confident. However, judging by her attire, she must come from an extraordinary background. He estimated that she was usually a bright and confident girl. In the future, he would have a group of powerful personal guards, called the Crowned Guards, whose strength would be second only to his own in the entire ninja world. This included his clansman Hinata Homura, as well as Hatake Kakashi, Might Guy, Anko Mitarashi, Kabuto Yakushi, Shisui Ucha, Itachi Ucha, Mai Terumi, and others. These individuals were also the Empire's top combat forces and his representatives. Then stay, Jin said slowly. A hint of uncontrollable joy appeared on Mai Terumi's face, and she bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty. The girl was full of joy, while Jin thought to himself that if she were to stay by his side, he would have to place a tongue-wagging curse seal of absolute release on her. After sending the two from Kirigakure away, Hinata Hisashi suddenly delivered a letter. From Sunagakure. Jin was a little surprised. A sand ninja personally delivered it, and that person has been detained by us, Hinata Hisashi said. Konoha's new security department was managed by him and Fugaku Ucha. Jin pondered for a moment before opening the letter and reading it. This was a letter requesting aid. The death of the Fourth Kazekage Rosa had plunged Sunagakure into chaos. The Third Great Ninja War had officially erupted due to the disappearance of the Third Kazekage as the catalyst. In the original plot, it was Rosa who quelled the internal strife of Sunagakure and successfully became the Kazekage. However, in the future, Jin had secretly colluded with Shikuten Yakata of Sunagakure, killed Rosa, and helped Yakata ascend to power. This was why Sunagakure participated in the siege of Konoha. Yakata had also been imprisoned by the powerful Rosa. But now, Rosa had been killed by Hyuga Takao again, causing the recently stabilized Sunagakure village to fall into chaos once more. This letter was written by Yakata, hoping that Konoha would help her control Sunagakure. In return, the letter stated that she was willing to pledge loyalty to him as she would in the future. The words were earnest. After finishing the letter, Jin sat there in thought. Sunagakure, Yakata, One Tails. Takao, Jin called out softly. A figure appeared silently by his side. Jin handed the letter in his hand over. After carefully reading it, Hyuga Takao asked, "Do you want me to go?" Jin asked, "How long will you need?" Hyuga Takao said with a deep gaze, "Quelling the chaos and suppressing it is the simplest matter. Bring back the One Tails." "Understood. My sleep schedule is messed up, and I've been in a daze all day. Also, I will make up for what I owe." Before Jin, the concept of emperor and empire did not exist in this world. For 1,000 years, the world had been in a state of constant warfare, with the highest rulers being mere daimyo, akin to kings and lords. The only period of unification was during the Sage of Six Paths era, with the ninjutsu sect. To many, empire was a new term with religious connotations. They didn't understand why it was called that, but they knew that Jin Hyuga, the emperor of the empire, would be a ruler whose power surpassed that of the daimyo. After all, this was the future. Under the emperor's rule, the world would usher in an unprecedented era of peace and prosperity. Everyone truly understood that future, and the events foretold in the divine oracle were gradually coming true, making them even more convinced. Konoha was adorned with grand and solemn decorations. Every household displayed auspicious talismans, colorful lanterns hung from eaves, and long red carpets were laid out on the roads. The citizens crowded the sides of the roads, none daring to step on them. Compared to the enthronement ceremonies many remembered, this one was much smaller in scale, as Konoha was still just a small village. Along this solemn main road, watched by thousands, a carriage slowly approached. Jin was dressed in magnificent attire. Although it was hastily made, it appeared very noble visually. He did not wear a crown. He had not requested one to be made, as he felt it would be heavy on his head, and bearing burdens was also heavy. Jin sat in the carriage, feeling the gazes from all directions. His heart was exceptionally calm at this moment. The citizens on both sides of the road knelt down, shouting "Long live." The enthronement process was very simple, with no pronouncements to heaven or any cumbersome rituals. Jin's carriage finally reached its destination, which was still the location of the Hokage building. Due to the haste, there was no imperial palace, and Jin would not reside in the daimyo's mansion. The Hokage building would temporarily serve as his office. Every time a Hokage succeeded to the position, They would stand here and swear to protect the village with their lives to the villagers below. Jin was also making a declaration. He did not care about the hatred or animosity directed at him, nor about the future known to the world. He only cared about the future he would experience from now on. He was still the emperor, and he would surely rule everything in the future. Those who intended to kill him, who played games with him from the shadows, would all meet a grim end. There would be only one king in this world. Konoha was engulfed in grand revelry. The Land of Fire was renamed. The Sun Empire began today. At noon, the simple enthronement ceremony concluded, and Konoha was filled with lively celebration. Jin then met with Takao Hyuga, who had rushed back from the Land of Wind. Takao had stayed in Sunagakure for 2 days, helping Pakura deal with some political rivals. He had reached an agreement with Pakura. Once she had stabilized Sunagakure, she would pledge allegiance to Konoha. From Takao Hyuga, Jin learned that before he was sent there, Pakura's situation was extremely perilous. After being imprisoned by Rosa, she was held in jail. If Takao Hyuga had not gone, she would not have had the chance to become the Fifth Kazekage. In the original plot, she was merely a political sacrifice abandoned by the village, isolated and powerless. Later, in a letter Pakura entrusted to Takao Hyuga, besides words of loyalty, she also mentioned the One-Tails. The Jinchuriki of the One-Tails, Shikaku, was a monk named Bunpuku. Unfortunately, he was under the command of Sunagakure's higher-ups. In the end, during a battle with Takao Hyuga, he was beaten half to death and had little time left. Pakura then found a new vessel for the One-Tails. Takao Hyuga brought the new One-Tails Jinchuriki before Jin. She was a young woman with shoulder-length sandy-blonde hair, vacant eyes, and her mind and spirit had been controlled by Takao Hyuga using an Otsutsuki secret technique. Jin examined her, his gaze then settling on her slightly protruding abdomen. Pregnant, Takao Hyuga said, "She is the wife of the Fourth Kazekage." Jin frowned. "Why seal the One-Tails within her?" Takao Hyuga replied. Pakura said, "Your Majesty, you would like her." Jin's expression darkened. He looked at the contents of the letter again and snorted. Self-righteous woman. This woman was the mother of Gaara, Temari, and Kankuro in the original work, named Karura, and the source of Gaara's power. Jin eventually had Karura placed under guard and then said to Takao Hyuga, "You have worked hard." "It is my duty," Takao Hyuga replied, bowing his head. Jin gently shook his head. "There is no duty between us. Do not always see yourself as merely a tool." Hyuga Takao was speechless. "That's right. You can bring your wife to Konoha to live. It will also be convenient for her to take care of her pregnancy." After thinking it over, Hyuga Takao refused. "Having family around will only distract my subordinates. I follow you to atone for my sins, and I should have no other thoughts." Shin did not force him, only saying, "Think about it carefully. After all, Shiren will always be by my side in the future, won't he?" "Thank you, Your Majesty." "You want to break into prison?" Jiraiya looked at Minato in front of him, utterly astonished. Minato denied, "No, I just want to save Shikaku." He could openly break into prison and take Shikaku away from Konoha, but doing so would only put him at odds with Konoha, and he did not want to leave Konoha. "Then what do you plan to do?" Jiraiya couldn't help but ask. Minato pondered. "In 2 more days, Shikaku will be executed. However, it won't be a public beheading. The execution will be carried out by people from the torture department, and the medical department will be responsible for the final inspection. There should be someone from the Hyuga clan present throughout the entire process." Jiraiya reacted and said thoughtfully, "You want to tamper with the execution? Secretly send Shikaku out of Konoha and let everyone think he's dead?" Minato nodded. Jiraiya frowned. "The risk is too great. To do this, we need our people in the torture department and the medical department. Things are not the same as before, and these people may not help us." Minato exhaled, saying, "In the torture department, there are some former subordinates of Danzo Shimura. Although he has been stripped of his power now, his subordinates have always been extremely loyal to him." Jiraiya was stunned. He never expected Minato to be involved with someone like Danzo Shimura. But this was to save Shikaku. He was silent for a long time, then asked, What about the medical department? Minato replied, this will require you to step in. He steps in. Jiraiya pondered for a moment and immediately understood what he meant. His eyes flickered for a moment, and he sighed, saying, Minato, you still won't give up, will you? Give up what? Minato retorted. Teacher, in your opinion, is it the position of Hokage or the life of a friend? Jiraiya was choked, and he suddenly felt a bit ashamed, realizing he had misunderstood the other party. I understand. I will do my best. Minato remained silent, his expression calm. He looked at Jiraiya in front of him, and after a moment, suddenly spoke. Teacher, do you still remember the prophecy you told me? Jiraiya was slightly startled, a little surprised. Teacher, at first, I didn't think I had such great ability, but now I believe it. Mount my Boku. Elder Shima was somewhat surprised to see Jiraiya arrive of his own accord. Little Jiraiya, why have you come? I've come to seek an audience with the Great Lord, to ask about some matters, Jiraiya said. Elder Shima pondered for a moment before asking, what matters? It concerns the future of the ninja world. Elder Shima was astonished. Has something happened in the ninja world? Jiraiya was equally puzzled and immediately asked, you don't know? After a moment of thought, Jiraiya asked again, do you know of Hinata Shin? Who is he? Jiraiya then recounted everything he knew about Hinata Shin to Elder Shima, who was greatly shocked. To think it would be like this, Elder Shima found it hard to believe. Meanwhile, Jiraiya was also contemplating. The toads of Mount Maiboku were unaware of this matter. Could it be because they were not human? That's why I wanted to ask the Great Lord, Jiraiya said. Elder Shima hesitated. But the Great Lord is currently asleep. Jiraiya quickly asked, when will the Great Lord awaken? Elder Shima slowly shook his head. The Great Lord has lived for over 1,000 years. He has slept countless times, but the duration is never fixed. It could be a few months, or it could be several decades. Several decades, that was his entire lifetime. Jiraiya's heart sank. At such a critical time, after a period of silence, Jiraiya let out a long sigh. Elder Shima then added, little Jiraiya, the Great Lord is never wrong. You must believe the prophecy he gave you. Furthermore, those memories of the future did not appear out of thin air. Someone must be manipulating them from behind the scenes. Jiraiya replied, currently, almost everyone in the world believes it to be divine revelation. Elder Shima shook his head. What divinity is there? As he spoke, his voice suddenly stopped. I recall the Great Lord mentioning before that a long time ago, there was a goddess who controlled the thoughts of all humans in the world. Jiraiya exclaimed in surprise, you mean? Elder Shima mused, that was a very long time ago. The Great Lord didn't say much, but the ultimate outcome was a good one. He then added, however, based on the future you described, Hinata Shin's existence doesn't seem to be a bad thing. He has ended the years of war in the ninja world. Without him, the wars would have continued for years, even decades. Elder Shima then asked, is there anything you wish to do? Hearing this, Jiraiya suddenly felt a sense of confusion. Why did so many people in the world flock to Hinata Shin? Why were his other 3 disciples willing to follow him? Indeed, wasn't Hinata Shin's existence a good thing for this world? It's just that this person's goodness was not pure. He also employed schemes and tricks and killed innocent people. In Jiraiya's view, if there were a savior in the world, it should be someone like Minato. Upright and selfless. But in the future, Minato died at his hands. Jiraiya hesitated. Minato claimed to have received guidance from the Sage of 6 Paths. Sage of 6 Paths. Elder Shima was even more shocked. Jiraiya continued, the Sage of 6 Paths said that Hinata Shin's existence disrupted the world's order and instructed Minato to stop him. Everyone knew the future, and Hinata Shin was step by step achieving what he had done in the future. His existence would only make people believe more in destiny, which was by no means a good thing. As for the so-called era of peace and prosperity, Jiraiya's mind was in turmoil. He couldn't understand why the Sage of 6 Paths would give such instructions. Could Minato be deceiving him? But the mark on Minato's hand, along with the extra chakra within him, were not fake. Such potent yang release was beyond the capabilities of an ordinary person. Who was in the right? Elder Shima said solemnly, "This is a matter of great importance. It seems we must awaken the Great Lord." He then called for Elder Shima. The two toads led Jiraiya to the Great Toad Sage's sleeping quarters. Afterward, the two great sages outside opened their mouths wide, puffed up their bodies, and let out waves of croaks. After a moment of pause, there was no reaction from within. The Great Toad's sleeping place was a blessed land within a cave, yet the great door remained tightly shut. The two great sages exchanged glances. "What's wrong?" Jiraiya asked from the side. Elder Fukasaku hesitated for a moment and said, "Child's mother, let's try again." "All right," Elder Shima responded. Then, they repeated the previous steps. The croaking sounds were somewhat jarring to Jiraiya's ears. The massive stone door still showed no reaction. Elder Fukasaku murmured, "Impossible." Elder Shima asked in confusion, "Why isn't the Great Lord responding?" "I'll go in and take a look." After a moment of thought, it leaped to the front of the stone door. Its incredibly small body was actually able to push the giant stone door directly. "Let's go in together," Elder Shima said at this moment. Once the stone door was fully open, Jiraiya accompanied the two toad sages inside. But in the next instant, he was so shocked by the scene within that he froze in place. Due to its immense size, the great toad's dwelling was extremely spacious. It usually sat on a stone chair in this grand hall, rarely moving, and mostly sleeping. But at this moment, Jiraiya saw that the oldest resident of Mount Maiboku had fallen to the ground. The ground was covered in dried, blackened bloodstains, and it was impossible to tell how long it had been there. "This Great Lord," the two great sages cried out in shock. Elder Fukasaku quickly jumped over and carefully examined the great toad. Silence. After his shock subsided, Jiraiya surveyed the surroundings. He noticed a manually carved ceiling jutsu at the entrance, which hadn't been there the last time he visited. He immediately went to inspect it and frowned. "Someone has been here and set up a ceiling barrier, preventing the outside world from discovering what happened inside." Elder Fukasaku also said gravely, "Too much time has passed, and even a senjutsu talisman won't be enough." "Great Lord!" Elder Shima lamented. Who could it be? They, of Mount Maiboku, had always been isolated from the world and had no enemies. Who would specifically come here to kill the great toad sage? Jiraiya re-examined the surroundings but found no further clues. There were no signs of a struggle. He didn't know if the great toad sage was skilled in combat, but with its power to foresee the future, hadn't it sensed this beforehand? The perpetrator was able to accomplish this while deceiving the entire Mount Maiboku, so they couldn't be an ordinary person. "Little Jiraiya," Elder Fukasaku said again. "It seems you can't get guidance from the Great Lord anymore." Jiraiya's gaze darkened. "Great Lord? For 1,000 years, the Great Lord has never set foot outside. There couldn't possibly be any enemies," Elder Fukasaku said. It had considered enemies from a more distant past but dismissed the idea. Those from the same era as the Great Toad Sage were only the sages of the other two Holy Lands, but they also had no grudges with Mount Maiboku. Jiraiya pondered, if a person has no enemies and is actively sought out, then it's only possible that they possess some coveted treasure or a power that instills fear. Elder Fukasaku's gaze deepened. Was it because the Great Lord possessed the prophetic power to know the future? Adofu Street, a commercial street not far from Konoha, was quite prosperous. Jiraiya found Tsunade in a casino here, loudly cheering amidst a group of gamblers. Several boxes of cash were placed beside them, indicating they were betting heavily. Tsunade seemed to sense something and turned to see Jiraiya. Her eyes immediately lit up. "Jiraiya. That's great, you're here." Jiraiya couldn't help but stiffen, a bad premonition dawning on him. Tsunade turned and shouted to the gamblers, "This person is Jiraiya, one of the Sannin, a student of the Third Hokage, and the teacher of the Yellow Flash. With his reputation, he can lend us a few 100,000, right, Jiraiya?" After a considerable effort, he managed to drag Tsunade out of the casino. The two sat down in an izakaya. "You want me to help you pull some strings?" Tsunade asked in surprise. "Shikaku is to be executed the day after tomorrow," Jiraiya nodded. Tsunade carefully examined Jiraiya. Jiraiya then added, "It would be best if you could help, but if not, I won't force you." Tsunade scoffed, "Jiraiya, even you aren't firm enough. Do you think this will fail?" Jiraiya was silent for a moment, then said, "There is a certain risk, but if we don't, Shikaku will die." Tsunade drank her sake indifferently, then said, "Don't you know what Shikaku did? His clan abandoned him. People lost in power are not worth me taking such a risk to save. I advise you not to get involved either. Didn't you want to kill him?" That was when he was at the mercy of others. Jiraiya silently drank his sake, not uttering a word. Seeing him like this, Tsunade's gaze shifted slightly. "Jiraiya, can't you see the path ahead clearly anymore?" Jiraiya heard her and felt a bit lost. He whispered, "What exactly is right?" Tsunade, however, said, "Isn't the future transparent? Everyone knows that future." Hinata Shin tamed the Ninetails, repelled the sand, cloud, and stone villages, and became emperor. He is also step by step proving that future is true. Jiraiya was speechless, but stubbornly said, "Not everyone believes it. No one doesn't believe it, it's just that some people refuse to accept fate because they didn't get what they wanted in that future." Jiraiya lowered his head, looking at the transparent liquid in his cup, his thoughts becoming increasingly chaotic. Minato, Kaiser is so fierce today. And, really. After being rejected by Tsunade, Jiraiya returned to Konoha to see Minato. "It's all right, I've already made other plans," Minato said. Jiraiya was a little surprised. "I went to see Lord Biwako." Minato didn't hide it from him and said directly. Jiraiya pondered for a moment. Sarutabi Biwako was the third Hokage's wife, and she naturally had enough prestige in Konoha. Having her step in would be similar to Tsunade. He couldn't help but ask, "You guessed Tsunade wouldn't do it?" Minato said, "Everyone has different thoughts. I'm just making thorough preparations." His expression was calm as he spoke. Jiraiya felt an unprecedented emotion from him. The Minato of the past was also confident, but it was a gentle and firm confidence that drew people in and convinced them. Now, Jiraiya felt a constant, calm indifference from him. Jiraiya was silent for a moment, then suddenly asked, "Minato, did the Sage of Six Paths tell you anything else?" "Why do you ask?" Jiraiya paused, then smiled, "It's nothing, just a casual question." Minato looked at him steadily. "No, I only saw him once in a dream." After Jiraiya left, Minato went to find Kushina. In the past few days, he had only visited Kushina a handful of times. "Minato, have you been very busy lately?" Kushina asked. "I have some things to attend to." "What things?" Minato just smiled gently. "Nothing, just some trivial matters." He didn't tell Kushina about his plans. He didn't want her to be involved, nor did he want her to worry about him. This included the matter of the Sage of Six Paths. Kushina didn't ask further and also smiled. "By the way, Minato, will you accompany me out tomorrow?" "Where to?" "Adufu Street. I heard there's a new hot spring in that opened there. The war is finally over, and we rarely have time, so we can go try it out together." She knew about Shikaku's situation. In her eyes, such matters were irreversible. That's why she wanted to take Minato out of the village to distract him and prevent him from being too sad. Minato fell silent at her words. "It's not a mixed-gender bath, so don't get any wrong ideas," Kushina suddenly said, her face blushing. Minato gently shook his head. "I have other things to do tomorrow." Kushina immediately asked again, "What about the day after tomorrow?" Minato sensed something and looked at Kushina. "I'll be very busy for these 2 days. Kushina's eyes flickered, and she pursed her lips. "But I don't even know what you're busy with." "Minato. I'm worried about you." Minato was taken aback. He suddenly realized that he hadn't paid much attention to Kushina's feelings these past few days. He wanted to comfort her, but before he could, Kushina suddenly stepped forward and took his hand. "Minato, let's get married." The unexpected proposal left Minato stunned. Kushina looked at him directly, and in her sincere eyes, Minato saw his own reflection. She earnestly said, "I don't want to wait any longer, Minato. We can invite Teacher Jiraiya, and Lord Biwako, and so many, many friends. We can have a child, and give him a new, proper, nice name. We have so much, and we have a long future ahead of us." "Minato, I want to marry you. After hearing the last sentence, Minato's heart trembled. He finally nodded forcefully. Okay, a bright smile bloomed on Kushina's face. Let's go find Lord Biwako and ask her to help us set the wedding date. Okay. We'll write the invitations ourselves and invite our friends to our wedding. Okay. Minato's expression grew increasingly gentle as he looked at the woman he loved. Hyuga clan compound. Shin was currently handling some internal political affairs of Konoha. Although he had become emperor, he had delegated the power of governing the country to his ministers. He now had to manage Konoha's internal affairs in addition to his own cultivation, leaving him with little energy for other matters. In a world with such extraordinary power, strengthening himself quickly was the more important thing. The authority he had delegated could always be reclaimed once he became powerful. As for those ministers, seeing Hinata Shin become emperor and then become a hands-off manager, they were naturally delighted. Ministers rarely liked a strong monarch. Hinata Kiyomi specifically came to seek an audience and presented a box. Your Majesty, the item you ordered is ready. Shin took it and opened it to take a look. Inside lay a delicate and small talisman, adorned with patterns encircling the character explosion. This was a specially made explosive tag. It was made so small because Shin intended to place it inside someone's body. After inspection, Shin handed it back to Hinata Kiyomi. Take a medical ninja from the clan to the prison and transplant this explosive tag into Shikaku Noro's body. Hinata Kiyomi was stunned. He never imagined the explosive tag would be used this way, and the method seemed too cruel. He couldn't help but ask, Your Majesty, isn't Shikaku Noro scheduled to be executed tomorrow? Someone will surely be unable to resist making a move, Shin said calmly. He had deliberately not executed Shikaku Noro that day, confident of this outcome. If someone dared to oppose him, it would also give him a legitimate reason. Hinata Kiyomi pondered for a moment. You mean, Minato Namikaze? Would he dare to attempt a jailbreak? He shouldn't stand against the village. Whatever he does is irrelevant, we just need to be prepared. Keep this matter discreet. After the surgery, you must stay by Shikaku Noro's side day and night, preventing anyone from being alone with him. Hinata Kiyomi's expression sharpened. Yes. Also, only keep 2 people for Shikaku Noro's execution, the rest are not needed. Understood. Hinata Kiyomi immediately took a medical ninja from his clan to the prison. The Hyuga clan's status was now extraordinary. The prison guards, upon seeing Hinata Kiyomi, respectfully ushered him inside. You all can leave. I have something to say to Shikaku Noro alone, he said, glancing at those around him before giving the order. The person in charge here hesitated for a moment but ultimately did not defy the others' wishes. Shikaku Noro was sitting in the corner, looking at them indifferently. Once only the 3 of them remained, Shikaku said coldly, I have nothing to say to you. Hinata Kiyomi sneered, you worry too much. I have nothing to say to you either. With that, he suddenly formed hand seals. Shikaku, whose restraints had been applied, fell into genjutsu without any resistance. Hinata Kiyomi took out the box containing the explosive tag and said to the person beside him, Begin. Make him completely unconscious first. The Hyuga clansman beside him nodded gently, opened the iron bars, and walked in.